But I think that plays really well into one of the topics that we wanted to talk about today, which is it's was the Screen Actors Guild, and I'll let you kick the story off. You're more well versed in it.
Yeah, it was this whole sort of quabble between the WGA and the ATA, and essentially sort of what it is that okay, so I'll use like a sports analogy, right? So we all know how the NFL has the bargaining agreement with the Players Association. So there's the NFL, and then there's the is it called the NFL Players Association? Is that what it's called? Okay, so you have the NFL and then Players Association.
It's not the NBA Players Association.
Fair enough. No, I mean, I didn't know if it was called the NFL Players Association or if it was like something else, like National Players Association. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe I was thinking too far.
Yes.
Into. Okay. So essentially, there's clearly a bargaining agreement between the NFL and the Players Association on the terms of their contract, of what's expected of both parties, and that's exactly what we have here with the WGA and the ATA, and the WGA representing obviously the Writers Guild of America, and the ATA, and I've always forgotten exactly.
Yeah, Association of Talent Agents.
There you go. Association of Talent Agents. And what you essentially have, and if I were to break this down sort of broadly, and I have to attribute this article to IndieWire, because they had a great article in the past couple of days that spoke to us. But essentially, it's a clash of the terms of the agreement, where the WGA is basically saying, hey, you've been treating us like a shit for the past like 40 some odd years, and the ATA being like, we don't see what the problem is. Like, we don't know what's going on here. You okay? Let's have lunch. Let's talk this over. Some fucking sashimi.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And I'll break this down in a couple different sort of ways that sort of illustrate sort of what the inherent issues are. And again, I have to attribute pretty much all of this to IndieWire, specifically Chris Olfalt, who published an article this past within the past week or so, or a couple of weeks. Okay, so let's jump into this. And this agreement that they have is called the AMBA, which is the agreement between the ATA and the WGA, and it regulates the terms of how agents represent writers, stating that agents can charge upwards of 10% of a writer's earnings for their services. Now, that on its face seems like pretty reasonable deal, but what that leads to is this sort of common practice of what's called packaging, which is essentially agencies bundling a project and script with talent in order to sell a show or a movie. And it's been happening for decades. And that's a problem in and of itself, because in that case, these agencies, and you have the CAA, you have WME, and I think they call it the Big Four, right?
Yep, CAA, WME, UTA, and ICM.
Yes,
a
lot of fucking letters. Acronyms. Yeah,
fuck.
It's hard to keep them straight. But they use this sort of tendency as a bundling or packaging rather, to basically maximize their own profits, right? To maximize what they can get out of the deal. So it depends on the project and who they can get for the project, and they try to just basically craft what makes sense for their bottom line. Like, okay, so for instance, it doesn't, if they have a script, right, this script from a well-known scriptwriter, and they can pair that with a well-known director, but perhaps the person that is best for the role is bumfuck from Wisconsin, right? But they could also get, I don't know, name any sort of head actor or actress as their lead person. They would opt to do that versus going with this person who's clearly right for the role because it helps their bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Now, where it gets complicated is that actually does help the thing actually get made, right? Because then people are like, oh, like, yeah, we'll fund this because we know there's a reasonable expectation for the return on our money if we were to invest in this particular thing. But again, that line becomes very blurry of what's helping the project overall and what's helping the talent agency's bottom line overall.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of the times when you could look at just any consumer product in general, right? Or product, or any product or service, companies package these things because let's say there's one thing that's selling really well. Like, hey, we know this is going to work. We know this particular product is selling well. We know this particular writer has a body of work that has historically produced a healthy return, right? Yeah. This other product over here is not doing as well. We want to pair it with something that is doing better to bring the margins or the return on the investment of that up. And we're also going to bring in this third thing as well to like sweeten the pot a little bit, or because we know this also works, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much what's happening here. It's just when you take a commodity, you take a product, you pair it up, you package it, you put it into a bundle of things that looks good on the outside, even if that package is not what's in the best interest of the consumer. Yeah. And what's happening here is, from what I understand, is the agencies are looking for their own self-interest, right? And their fees, not necessarily concerning themselves with what is in the best interest of this particular writer's career path, the story that's being written, so on and so on.
Because the writers are their client, you know, in this case. And if the writers are your client, then you have to treat them as such, meaning that like you have to look out for just literally like what you just said is you have to look out for what's best for them, not what's best for your bottom line, you know?
Yeah.
And that line becomes very blurry because on its face, you can claim, oh, you're trying to do what's best for the project, and trying to bundle it with other sort of aspects. And again, this is to exactly what you just said, but that becomes hazy when it seems as though you're more worried about that bottom line than you are, you know, like, so for, again, in the example that I laid out, if somebody else is clearly better for this project and that project can still be made, you'd opt to go with the larger name talent because you know that's going to be better for you at the end of the day, because that talent is going to be able to charge more for the project. In which case your 10%, you know, again, back to fractions and decimals here. 10% of 100 is more than 10% of $10, you know?
Yeah.
So you doing the quick math, you're like, well, we'll just opt to do the bigger talent, even though this other person is clearly more suited for this specific product or project. And it can still be funded even in that case, you know?
Yeah. And to paint this in another picture, right? Like, let's say you're looking for a new television, internet, and phone provider, right? So Verizon's going to give you one bundle. AT&T is going to give you another bundle. Sprint is going to give you another bundle, right? And then in that bundle or in that package, they're going to add in things that do several things. Either it's going to jack up the price, but you feel like you're getting more.
Yeah.
So you really just need Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah.
But you have to get Wi-Fi and television and a landline because that's the bundle. And, you know, we'll also throw in a free phone for you.
That's a dog barking, by the way.
Yeah, there's a dog there.
Sorry.
Right? So it's like, you know, what you really want should cost you $50, but hey, buy this $90 package, right? Because you're getting this little bit of extra. But really what's happening is they're getting extra. You're getting more of stuff you don't really need.
Because you don't need it.
They're getting higher fees.
Exactly.
So these agencies, they're like, we're going to sell the consumers this package of this writer, this director, this actor, this producer, even if the film maybe should have a smaller budget actress or actor who is not going to bring in the millions of dollars that they want to see,
but it's better
for the story. Just like, again, the consumer, you may just need Wi-Fi. That's all you need, but they're going to sell you the TV and the landline package because it's better for them.
Absolutely. And let me quote a couple of things. In this article, they bring up a couple different really sort of good points. So let me just quote this. Likely what was most troubling for the agencies was that a majority of marquee showrunners and TV creators, names like Shonda Rhimes, Mike Schur, Greg Berlanti, I know the dudes list a whole bunch of names, whose shows are what agencies are making a fortune packaging, were so visible in their support of this. So the WGA, essentially, there was a deadline, I think, on April 6th, and the WGA was just like, yeah, fuck it. Like we'll let that, deadline pass.
Yeah.
In which case they sort of like voided the deal between, and again, this deal has been in place for
since like 1976.
Yeah, 76. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of years this deal has been in place, and they've essentially been like, fuck it, because the terms just aren't in their favor. This is written almost a fucking half century ago.
Probably language in there that says women can't write. Women writers have to pay higher fees.
And if you're black, you just can't do this at all.
You pay 90% of your earnings.
Let me do this other quote. One of the most important backdrops to the WGA ATA standoff is the over $3 billion in private equity that WME, CAA, and UTA have taken in the past 10 years. Instead of being partner owned, the WGA argues the top three talent agencies now operate under the pressure of private equity level profit expectations. This has caused a seismic shift away from the agency's core mission of serving clients overall else, fulfilling the fiduciary obligation to always act solely in the best interest of clients and to avoid conflicts of interest. So that quote sort of sums it all up, which is these talent agencies are working more as like equity firms than they are actual agencies that are supposed to be representing their clients, which is the writers, and when your incentive is profit, that changes the landscape of the moves that you're going to make. You're no longer going to think, oh, hey, let me do what's best for my client, which is the writer. You're thinking, what can I do to fucking maximize my profit in this,
And I mean, you just have to look at the language there, right? The word equity is the primary word there. And you only ever hear that word when you're talking about assets, whether it's property, whether it's like a home or a commercial residence, or like a home primary residence, or you're talking about like commodities, right? Oil, steel, like those things are commodities that you can gauge and determine the equity of, right? Or equity in. Whenever you talk about people and you're using the word equity, you're clearly not talking about like what's in the best interest of those people, those clients, right?
Yeah.
You have, is it commoditized them? You've turned them into a commodity, which
I'll believe it.
Yeah, right. Commoditized. You turn them into a commodity or a product, which makes it easier to sell them and represent your interests, not theirs.
And to feed into that, essentially, these sort of talent agencies are trying to make the shift to creating their own content as well. So then that's another layer of conflicts of interest.
Dirty fuckers,
right? Because it's like you're representing your own employees in that case, right? So if you're representing your own employees, it's like, how am I ever really supposed to believe that you're actually looking into the best interest of your employees and not your own interest, right? Because it would benefit you to have your employees basically work for nothing and for you to reap all the benefits of their employment, right?
Yeah.
And where this gets complicated is not just in, like, more specifically, it's the higher tier people are going to be fine, right? Like the higher tier writers who are already known commodities, they're going to be fine. But the people who are essentially going to be raped and pillaged are the writers who aren't yet known, who are up and coming, right? Because the deals that they sign are going to be so fucking disadvantaged, or not to their favor, which these companies are supposed to be writing deals to the fucking client's favor, but they're clearly not going to be writing it to their favor because they're trying to maximize their own profits,
Yeah. They don't care much for the growth of a writer and being able to take on product or projects that they're inspired by, that they are interested in working on, that they have experience working on. They're not worried about their career paths. They're like, all right, how do we take this writer and how do we maximize the profit we can get off of this person, right? Whenever that happens and you're talking about people, it's always a bad recipe, right?
Yeah. It really is. And again, to sort of wrap this up, to add into that layer, like, so it's been sort of well publicized that some of these companies are trying to take their company public. Which again, if you take your company public, you're essentially like, your main goal in that case,
profit,
is just profit, so with companies like CAA and WME trying to sort of do that, it's no mystery what their incentive and what their goals are.
It's going to muddy the waters even more.
It really
so
is.
Now that this deal has expired, we're definitely going to have to follow this story because I'm going to be interested to see what comes next. If there's another more favorable agreement that comes into play, if a lot of these writers, and because I feel like now it's easier than ever to represent yourself.
Yes.
Right.
And that leads into, so the WGA is basically trying to subvert the talent agencies by creating sort of their own sort of systems and practices for connecting writers with projects. Right. So they've got their own sort of, and I'll read this one line. The WGA has also set up a staffing submission system to help connect writers with shows that are hiring. The Guild also empowers managers and lawyers to negotiate in place of agents should a deal not be reached.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully something better comes of this, right? Because you hate when... I'd hate to see greed take control over like the events to come, and for another deal or another agreement to be put in place that's again not in the best interest of the writers, and we see another 43 years of this. Again, we're gonna follow this story. We're gonna see what's to come.